Here to discuss the shootings in Tulsa and Charlotte, I'm joined now by the host and managing editor of NewsOne Now, Roland Martin, to discuss also the impact that it could have on this presidential race. Roland, thanks for joining us. Just looking back, it was just July that the Alton Sterling shooting happened. The next day, July 6th, Philando Castile, two back-to-back shootings of black men, both unresolved. And here we are at the beginning of the fall. Two back-to-back shootings involving two black men.
Eric Garner case is still unresolved in terms of DOJ filing any civil rights charges. You also have other cases that have taken place, and this is part of the problem. Rakia Boyd, shot and killed by Dante Servant in Chicago. He was, in terms of fire, let go through technicality. But same thing, DOJ. This is the fundamental problem. The reason you have communities that are on edge because there's a belief that there is no justice. Marilyn Mosby got criticized in Baltimore because she charged the officers. What folks don't want to acknowledge is that by her charging the officers, that actually calmed the community down, because the community across the country feels as if officers are getting away with murder. And then it becomes, well, they didn't commit a criminal act. It was a violation of police procedures. But somebody's dead.
And so here we are waking up again to images in Charlotte of people acting out that anger, protesting. And I go back to, again, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, July 5th, July 6th, those cases have not been resolved. And it goes back to the feeling of there's never a conclusion. We're on to the next story. Yes, Dallas happened and the officers who lost their lives right after that, but we're on to the next thing.
But if there is a conclusion, 99% of the time, it's no charges. Yeah. I mean, not even a trial. In the case, at least with Jonathan Ferrell, in that particular case, the first grand jury came back, they, no indictment, and then the DA recused himself, went to the AG, got an indictment, went to trial. Okay, then you, of course, had the case of last year in Oklahoma, Robert Bates, reserve officer. He says, I meant to pull out my taser. Sounds very similar. I pulled my gun out. He was actually convicted of manslaughter, sentenced to 4 years in prison, which is extremely rare.
Yeah, and in these cases, there are always people who try to make everything divided down the racial lines. I watched the Eric Garner protests here in New York. There were a mix of people, African-American, Latino, white. Not since then, in large numbers, have I seen equal outrage amongst races until we saw this video that happened in Tulsa. Even Donald Trump now is saying that the officer may have choked, when we know these cases happen, and a large majority, and I will say it, a large majority of white commentators will bring up the issue of compliance. If you just had put your hands up, this would not have happened, or this only happens when you don't listen. Now, Donald Trump is saying, shock, how many, or choked, how many will follow him and acknowledge that this is not race? And
that's one of the most fundamental problems, because the way the law is stacked, it is stacked greatly in favor of law enforcement. Remember Sandra Bland? The officer tells her, put the cigarette out. She says, I don't have to. I can smoke in my car. Ma'am, get out of the car. He knew the moment he gave a lawful command, the law was on his side. He could arrest her for saying no. And that's why we saw the video. He was in the car and he was going over the statute. That's part of the problem here. You have to also change the laws to impact, as well the communities are all angry and upset.
Okay, we know that Flint, for example, did not come up in the Republican debate, I think ever so briefly. Does this come up Monday with both of those candidates vying for the black vote? What do they to be asked?
Lester Holt has to bring this up and ask them the question, what are you going to do to change this, as opposed to say, it's just sad, unfortunate.
All right, thank you very much, Roland Martin. Greatly appreciate it, Roland. And coming up, I'll talk with